I'm Allan Cogan. Join me as I share samples of whiskey with my guests and get to know them better. Welcome to the Cogan Conversation. Well, Phil, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. It's good to catch up. We haven't seen each other in over a year since, Fort Jackson?
Yeah, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We went to basic together in 2021.
Yeah, that was a strange time to be alive with COVID going on, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with just a brief bio. Who is Philip Dannelly?
Oh, I mean, that's an existential question, but in layman's term, I'm just a common person like everybody else. I'm a transportation manager for a trucking company, live in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm a part of the National Guard, and I'm down here in DC for the next year.
Hey, it's good to have a fellow Midwesterner on. So for this episode, I've selected various single malt whiskeys for you to try, and we're going to start with a local favorite from Wisconsin. So the Door County Distillery's single malt American whiskey. A little background on them first. Door County Distillery is Door County's first distillery since Prohibition and opened in 2011. They specialize in small batch spirits made from local Wisconsin ingredients, and it's connected to their fantastic Door Peninsula winery. Now, this craft distillery and winery hold a special place in my heart as I've spent tons of time up in Door County, specifically Sturgeon Bay, as a kid since my grandparents retired up there. Once I became a fan of wine and whiskey, I would always love stopping there with family for free tastings of both wine and spirits. But this specific single malt is made using 100% barley from the shipwrecked Brew Pub microbrewery in Egg Harbor. And it comes in at about 40% ABV, and it's only available in Wisconsin. So, cheers, man. Enjoy.
Yeah, that is smooth. Not quite as smooth as Aaron Rodgers' release though of the football, okay? I mean, it's from Wisconsin. It's gotta be similar to that, but not as good.
You're the second person to come on the podcast who has to personally attack my quarterback, who's not my quarterback anymore.
I mean, being fair, okay, I grew up a Green Bay Packers fan. Short story, my uncle gave me a Green Bay Packers Tasmanian Devil backpack for Christmas one year. So that kickstarted my Green Bay Packers. But then I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, moved away, got to keep the hometown team. Go Trevor Lawrence, go Jaguars.
That's fair. So you grew up in Florida, where you're in Ohio now, but you're out here in DC for a little stint. Are you still in Ohio? Is that what you call home?
Yeah, that is my permanent residence right now is Ohio. I mean, to call it my home, it's a little bit hard to do. I mean, I've been there for about 12 years now, but I also spent 12 years in Florida, so it's kind of one of those 50-50 things.
Sure. Okay. But what do you think about this? I know you said it's smooth. It comes in at about 40% alcohol. To me, it's very sweet for a whiskey, but what do you think?
I can taste it being sweet. Don't drink as often as I used to, but I can also feel a little bit of a kick at the tail end, almost like a little bit of a bitter.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, smooth, sweet, with a kick of bitter at the end. But it's almost like what I would do for like a daily, almost like a daily pour. Mm-hmm. If I wanted to have some whiskey at the end of the day, this is something I'd probably go with.
I got a ton of honeyed caramel on this. It's sweet, but it's very, very simple. I wouldn't necessarily choose this off of my shelf for a daily sipper, but more so as like a palate compass for something like you, who's new to whiskey. It kind of helps, pivot to where, you would understand what your references in your palate would be. This is a very basic attempt at copying Scotch. I think this would actually be fantastic as in a Scotch-based cocktail. This whiskey isn't very overpowering in flavor, but it's smooth and it's sweet and adds enough of that sweetness in to give some complexity to a cocktail. And actually, if I may, this could give some context to what this whiskey is and how it fits in the realm of whiskeys in the United States. This single malt whiskey follows the same path that most American whiskeys that aren't bourbon take. It's a copy of Scotch and the process and ingredients that Scotch whiskey uses, with a very distinct difference. Most American whiskeys, like Door County's spirit, don't use pot stills like its Scottish counterpart, and it has more free reign to play with the distillation process and ingredients and flavors, et cetera, than bourbon or rye, because those are bound by several federal laws. This is just a free reign American whiskey that's made in kind of mimics the Scottish process, obviously using barley, which is a big ingredient for Scotch whiskeys. Who do you consider your hero? Who do you look up to?
That's a good question. You know, I never really thought of it as much, and I know a lot of kids, especially boys, would say their dad, and he's definitely a man I look up to a lot. But being in that we're both in the Army right now, a lot of what I look up to right now and is my grandfather, who served in World War II, was always active in the community. Remember growing up, would always donate blood, and he was always very active with his old division from World War II. Sadly, he passed away 11 years ago, and being a dumb teenager as I was, I didn't take opportunity to actually learn of what he did. So I've done a little bit of research, figured out this battalion that he was in, the division, looked over where they mapped through Europe. They actually took as a talk Hitler's childhood home.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's kind of neat.
It's a neat fact, and you know, I'm branched as an officer in the Air Defense Artillery. My grandfather was in an armored division, but his battalion was a armored field artillery division. So I'm finding similar notes in my path a little bit compared to his. I think he ended up as a Chief Warrant 4 as an engineer, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hitler's childhood home. Where was that? Was it Austria?
I believe it was Austria. It was during their Rhinelands campaign. I think it was after the Battle of Ruhr Pocket, which they were involved with. Not a good light on the division of what happened there, but they were involved with it.
Okay. That's cool. So you would say your grandfather? Yeah,
I'm going to say my grandfather. Just looking back at what he did in his life and everything, he was a stand-up guy. And, you know, if my dad ever does listen to this, I always look up to him. I'm always going to call him for advice. I call him every day. And then also his dad did a lot of badass things too. You know, he was in the Air Force. He was also a captain of a chartered boat to take people out fishing, and he worked for NASA and Florida Power and Lights. And you know, back in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, so many cool things happened that we just don't even comprehend nowadays. Oh, I wish we can do that, but our grandparents actually did those things, and we just don't realize it. And then the older we get,
right,
and we find out about it, and we're like, oh, it's really cool, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's so many questions. I need to go back and, link up with my dad's dad and just talk to him about what he's done in life. And, just, he was stationed over in Korea, Okinawa, maybe not Korea, but definitely Okinawa. He was there during the Korean War, and that,
wow, really
cool things. And
it's kind of funny because you say that out loud and it doesn't seem real. We watch movies, we see TV shows, we read books. I mean, I have family who's in the military and who's done cool things too, but you never experience that. And especially today, the difference that we deal with in our military career will never be even remotely as hard or as reminiscent as what that thing that they did, right?
Absolutely. I mean, as well as I do, especially when we do field training exercise. You're infantry, I'm ADA, so I don't even get half the stuff that you guys get. Yeah. But we like to bitch and moan at the smallest things possible, and we have to fake it until we make it, and then we look back maybe a week later, a month later, it's like, you know what, it actually wasn't that bad, but it was a good time, but in the moment it sucked.
Yeah, right, yeah. Right. No, all the nights sleeping on the ground in the cold, it sucked, but I get to meet cool people and have cool experiences, and it makes you a little tougher, but not as tough as fighting on the front lines of Korean War, World War II.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. And I don't know if my grandfather and my dad's dad, I don't know if he was on the front line. He was just over in Okinawa.
Yeah, well, either way.
My dad was over there. Actually, fun fact about my dad is he's been on every single continent with the Air Force, not stationed there, but as touch foot in every single continent. And I was like, oh, that's a cool fact. I wish I could do that.
That is cool. I've only been on one continent. Here.
Yeah, just North America. Yeah. I mean, I've touched technically geographically 3. Yeah, but politically only in 2. Oh. Yeah. It's weird because the Canary Islands, they're owned by Spain, right?
Right.
But geographically, they're in the African continent.
That's true.
Yeah, so I'm never going to say, oh, I've been to Africa, because I haven't, but I have been on the African continent via the Canary Islands.
Okay. Interesting. If you could be president for 24 hours, U.S. president for 24 hours, what would you do?
the fun answer would be to have a national taco eating contest, because who doesn't love tacos? But if I did have a policy, I would actually start on the home front in DC first. I mean, just walking around DC today, like I'm seeing like trash bins full of trash, overfilling. I'd fix that first. DC is the place for the people to see their government work for them as public servants, but yet we can't even keep our own house clean.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm walking around, I'm like, man, these monuments are cool, but like the surrounding areas are just filthy. Like, and it's one thing for construction. I know constructions need to be done to buildings to keep up with infrastructure, everything up to date. That's cool, but just the basic stuff, like, why don't we have people keeping the streets clean? You know?
Sure.
I mean, that's such a basic, it's 101. That's what we learn in basic training, OCS, keep your shit clean. You know, keep your area clean. You know, bed's always made, your shirts are rolled in the right place, your foot locker's clean. But we can't even hold that true in our nation's capital.
Good point. So is that going to take up all 24 hours?
Is that going to take up all 24 hours?
Also, how do you do it?
That's the golden question. How do you do it? And how do you do it to where it makes sense for everybody to agree with it?
Well, also, remember, you're not God King. You don't just have a magic wand. You are the president under the current structure.
President under the current structure.
So, like, 24 hours, you're done. So either you have a bunch of fun and just do stupid things. Like, I'm going to go visit the Congo because I can. Well...
I mean, to be honest, if I was president, I'd probably resign within the first 24 hours because I don't want to put up with that shit.
That's the best answer.
It's a divided house right now. Nothing's ever going to get done, and no one's seeing eye to eye on anything. So, like, if I'm going to be president for 24 hours, I'm resigning because nothing's going to get done.
Me and my friends have talked about having a cool reality show where it's the premise that you're president for 24 hours, but it's like The Bachelor, and you just keep on picking new people. So every 24 hours, Secret Service busts in someone's door, and it's a national lottery. So your name is picked out of a hat. Oh, you're president. They kick down your door, and they bring you to the White House. They brief you for 2 hours. The next 24 hours is yours. Do it. Figure it out. And everyone's policies prior to you took hold. So the prior guy's 24 hours is in place. So if he had signed an executive order that said whatever, I guess you could reverse it, but... be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to watch. Very well would be interesting to watch. And this is going to be like a seesaw back and forth.
Right. I'd pay to watch it.
I probably paid to watch it. Yeah. Netflix, if you're listening.
Yeah, pick this up. 10 years go by, I'll reference this podcast, and then I want to get royalties. All right, well, you ready for the next sample?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, well, dating back to 1825, Edradour stands alone as the last stronghold of handmade single malt whiskey from a farm distillery still in production today. Edradour is one of Scotland's smallest distilleries, and this 10-year-old Eastern Highlander is one of my absolute favorites. So what we're sampling here is the Edradour 10-year distillery edition. This single malt's 10 years was spent in a combination of Oloroso sherry and bourbon casks, giving it a unique character. It goes for about $50. And I mean, if you can find it, it's many larger liquor stores with a good selection should have it, but don't expect it in your local small corner store. What are your thoughts?
Very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very sweet.
Especially compared to the Door County single malt. I've always loved this one for how much of a sherry bomb it really is. Really complex with fruity sweetness, and actually comes across more like a rum than a Scotch. I'll note too that this is noticeably darker than the Door County. I'd assume just, from the aging so long in sherry casks. I'm not sure how much it's aged in sherry and bourbon. I would assume it's aged for a period of time, probably 8 years in the bourbon barrels.
Does it say what type of barrel that they use? Was it like a oak?
So most Scotches are American oak. I'm going to see what the bottle says. Yeah, and this having been bourbon barrels are only American oak. And then a remainder of the time in sherry, just to give it that sweet flavor and the darkness and the spirit. But I'm not sure that they don't disclose that breakdown of the aging. Who's your favorite musician?
That is hard, because I listen to a lot of music just on like different playlists at a given time. So sometimes I'll hear a song and not realize who does it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I'm on a kick for right now is I've been on a kick with Bailey Zimmerman and Morgan Wallen.
Okay.
Yeah, just pop country, I know, but it's fun. It's good for the summer. So
yeah. Okay. Favorite sports team?
You can go with Jacksonville Jaguars right now.
Okay. You're supposed to say Packers, but okay.
Packers are a close second. If I can have a dream Super Bowl to go to, it would be Packers via Jacksonville.
Okay. Favorite food?
You can go with the ZA.
ZA pizza. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's more efficient than flying.
Exactly.
Everyone says flying.
And if you're really good with teleportation, you can actually do the effect of flying just by doing short distance of teleportation.
Sure. Okay. What about a go-to beverage?
Now, if you asked me like 2 months ago, I would have said Bang. That's my go-to beverage.
God.
But right now, it's probably I'm a bit on a Monster kick again. Not because like of the caffeine, but to me, Monster is more of like a juice now, just because caffeine doesn't do a lot for me anymore.
That sounds healthy.
Yeah, no. I'm surprised my heart hasn't exploded from the amounts of caffeine I drink. Or intake via grind packets,
Yeah, it'll catch up to you.
Yeah, eventually.
What is your biggest fear?
Oh, that's...
See, we're getting to know you.
Getting to know you. I mean, I guess the biggest fear I have would be being alone. And it's not the fact that I can't handle myself alone. Like I can definitely do that. But like, just imagine, God forbid we get in a large scale combat operation. Let's go, because I know that gets thrown out at you all the time. But just the fact and the psychological battle that you would have to do if you got stranded behind enemy lines by yourself.
Yeah.
The helplessness of just not knowing who's around you, not having any of your battles with you. And when I think of it in terms of alone, just like no forms of communication outside either. So like right now I can be by myself up in my like bedroom and I can call my dad and talk to my dad.
Sure.
Call my sister, I can talk to my sister, I can call a friend, talk to them. So I'm not actually alone. I have other forms of communication means to get in touch with people if I really want to talk to someone.
Sure.
But like, and alone in the sense of there's no forms of communication you can have. You're in an unfamiliar space with people you don't know, don't trust, or no one's around.
Okay. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, I mean it's very deep, and but I think everybody shares that similar thought. No one ever wants to be alone.
No.
Like truly alone. Like there are times where people want to be by themselves to like contemplate and think on like deep subjects, or just like they don't have the mental capacity to deal with crowds or people to be around, or they're just not feeling well. They're just like, I need to decompress. There's a difference between decompressing by yourself and being truly alone.
Sure. If you could travel through time, where would you go? What would you do?
If I can travel through time, I mean, that's just going to go back to where, like, not even that far back, like just 2005, 2008, sometime around then, where I actually sit down and, like, knowing what I know now, I talk with my grandfather. It's like, hey, tell me about the Battle of River Pocket. Tell me about your time in, like, going through the Rhinelands in Europe, your train up, like all of that. But that's just what I know now. You know, like, that's what I would want to do, talk to my grandfather, or being able to get him in a room with my other grandfather and just talk to both of them and have them both share their stories of like when they were in the service and what they did specifically. Because, another cool fact about my grandfather is when World War II came around, he lied about his age to enlist. He was like 15 or 16 when he enlisted.
Wow.
For World War II. Yeah. And he did his maneuver drills on Soldier Field in Chicago with wagon-drawn artillery.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good answer. Maybe I'm just selfish. I would be like, I want to go back in time and, sports bet.
I mean, you saw what that can do. Didn't you watch Back to the Future Part 2? I mean, come on. Marty McFly had the same idea. It didn't turn out too well.
I know.
When there's a shine on your shoes, there's a melody in your heart. With with a singable happy feeling.
All right, so this final pour is an absolute treat and one of the most accessible higher age statement scotches out there. The older the whiskey, the more expensive it'll be, but Glenfarclas has kept its older spirits more reasonable. You can find this for around $220 to $280 depending on where you are. But as far as availability, same situation as Edradour. It'll be in some larger stores that have a larger selection, but it won't be everywhere. This Highland single malt spent all 25 of its years in Oloroso sherry casks, making it a perfect after-dinner dessert. So, cheers, man. Enjoy.
Cheers. A lot smoother. Not as sweet, though.
Right.
But good. I do like it. You know, right off the rip, I would say if you are new to whiskeys but wanted something for like a special occasion and not looking to break the bank, this would be a good go-to.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I get more sweet in the back end with this. The more it sits on my mouth, the more it kind of doesn't have that leftover alcoholic taste like a lot of scotches do.
Yeah, it doesn't have that like that bitter.
Yeah. I get a really long, sweet finish on this, with sherry being the prevalent flavor, of course, but not nearly as strong as the Edradour. This has also got some unique chocolate notes I can't place, but it's the fun of doing these back to back. You'd think that this, having spent 25 years in sherry, would make it that much more sweet and sherried than the Edradour that we just had, but its age just makes it more complex.
Yeah, I'm not someone who has a super taste palette like a chef or something like that, but I'm sure a chef probably could pin all those out.
That's the weird thing about whiskey tasting, is that, you know, it's all about relative, like referential taste you have from other things, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a really refined palate, like a chef would, you've tasted all these things and other ingredients. When you come to this, your brain kind of picks up on something that you've had before. It goes, oh, that tastes like nutmeg. Oh, that tastes like chocolate. But a lot of people have to get by that initial alcoholic burn because it's Scotch, and you're like, oh, this tastes like Scotch. So,
I mean, it's almost like coffee. Like, not a lot of people can grab a glass of like black coffee and be like, oh, I can taste this different bean. But me, who drinks a whole bunch of coffee, and I only drink black coffee now, is I can tell different bean flavors, a different quality of coffee, and it's like, okay, this is a good coffee.
Yeah.
This is a cheap coffee.
Yeah.
You know, also how long it's been on the coffee burner too. You know, if it sits like for like 12 hours on a coffee burner, it's probably not going to taste good either.
No. All right. So out of the three, which one do you enjoy the most?
I'm going to go with the Edradour. Edradour was I mean, I think just the sweetness right up front was what got me on it. I mean, that's going to be the favorite one of the three for sure. But the 25 aged, that was pretty damn good too. But I'd probably keep that for like special occasions.
Yep.
You know, not like big occasions, but like smaller occasions, but still occasions nonetheless. You know, you just got a job promotion.
Yeah.
Break that out.
Yeah.
You know, it's not one of the ones I would break out if I just had a kid. You know, I'd probably splurge a little bit more on something like that, like a lifetime event. But, you know, minor events, you just got a promotion, you just got a pay raise.
Yeah.
That's a good one to break out for like other life events.
I usually save it for like when I get home on a Monday. It's an accomplishment.
That's a big accomplishment, making it past Monday. Okay.
Finished Monday.
So like you got Monday, and then Tuesday is known in my book as Monday number 2, and then there's Hump Day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Monday, Hump Day, Friday Eve, and Friday.
Yes.
And do you have any advice or thoughts for the people who might be listening?
A lot of people, including myself, like to rush to conclusions without taking time to just realize what another party is saying or what's actually going on. So, I mean, for me, what's been on my mind is just trying to slow it down. You know, be able to intake all the information, being able to process it properly, and not jump to a specific conclusion. Because, you know, you jump to a specific conclusion, you're very well likely to make an ass of yourself. And I've done that plenty of times. I mean, I feel like a lot of people has done that plenty of times. And we always go about our days like, oh, it's a mistake, it just happened. But learning how to slow things down. Obviously you have to keep at a good pace still, but even just taking that extra 2, 3, sometimes 5 seconds, a tactical pause, as you may. We've all heard that before being in the military.
Oh yeah.
But just applying it to real life is just slowing things down. Or even when you get an email and we're so used to skim reading, sometimes you just have to slow down in your day and read that full entire email to actually get a good idea of what's actually going on.
Right.
You can apply that to politics, you can apply that to your financial situation. Really utilizing just a spare few seconds to just process a situation is going to save you in the long run in any part of your life, whether it's cards, whether it's work, whether it's your financial situation, whether it's just your relationship with a friend, significant other, your parents, siblings. Yeah. Taking that slight pause.
It's good advice.
Yeah,
I could listen to that.
I can definitely listen to that, and it's just something I think about. And I'm not the best at following it because I go through and I find myself just snapping off real quick. You having that snap off, that pop off answer.
Yep.
And then realizing, oh God, I just made myself look like a giant ass.
Right.
Or
it comes across as like the way that you didn't mean it. You have something, you have good faith behind it, but you didn't take that tactical pause and phrase it the right way.
Yeah, and sometimes you catch it in the moment, and then you have to take the tactical pause after, which still works, but not as effective. Just be like, hey, This is I know how it came off. I didn't mean for it to sound that way, and you're kind of explain as this is what I actually meant.
Right. Right. Okay. What is something that, as you're comfortable to share, something painful that has shaped your character in your life?
Something painful that has shaped my life.
So far.
I mean, there's a lot of things that can shape my life. I think something that and you probably could pick this up on the way that I've been answering questions on this is having to process when my grandfather passed on the day of my high school graduation was it's hard, and it's something that the passing of someone close to you, or even just a grandparent or family member, is hard. And I don't think I've actually fully processed that until the older I get, and just looking back on things that I've done in my life that I wish I could have gone back and talked to, and just how much I realized I missed out on as a young adult or a young teenager, gaining experience or a lot of insight from someone who's been through the Great Depression, who went through the 80s inflation, who went through World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and experienced that firsthand while starting a family and raising a family, and just being able to take that information in as a teenager. And granted, a lot of people realize that in their 20s and have that opportunity to go back, but I never had that opportunity to go back to my grandparents, at least on my mom's side of the family. And I'm just realizing that now that I'm in the Army, I'm in DC, and now it's I'm slowly decompressing and processing that and doing my own research on it. If I ever need thought or clarity, or just to make myself feel better, or just to have that memory, I can always go to Arlington to see where him and my grandmother are interned at. So that would just be kind of shape my life in kind of a more of a psychological way, things I didn't realize I was missing out on, or what I can go back and look on, and now that I'm 29, thinking man, I need to really start decompressing this out of my life. I will always have them there, always have a memory to look back on, and history records that I can find, but I can't just live life saying what if. I gotta kind of think logically about it. It's what would he do in this situation? What did he do when I was younger? And just kind of pick up on what I experienced and saw when I was preteen and teenager.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that quite a bit. I fortunately had a little bit more time with my grandfather. He just passed in December,
mm-hmm.
and he abruptly got cancer,
mm-hmm.
and took him pretty quick. He was such a big part of my life, especially my childhood. He taught me how to tie knots. He taught me how to sail. He was in the Army,
mm-hmm.
But he was so philanthropic. And so if someone asked me who do I think of when I asked you earlier about who a hero is, I probably would agree with you. It's probably my grandfather, but only because he was such a good man. He was very, very simple, but in the best type of way. He was philanthropic. He would give. He donated a lot of time to the local museum. That's probably the most painful thing that's happened to me in recent memory. And it's funny because we look back on like people we've lost, and I've probably cried more and been more upset for when like a dog or a cat passes away, which I don't know, it's just some kind of special bond we have with animals. But then when someone who, like a grandfather or a parent, that it hits in such a deeper, different way that I have yet to process. I literally, he passed away in December. I was going to Bullock on January 16th, and the funeral was January 14th. So I flew back home, went to the funeral. I was in uniform for the funeral. Drove back home, and then drove to Benning within 24 hours, and then went to Benning and trained for those 19 weeks. And it's like, yeah, I haven't processed that yet. And then it's like, okay, maybe it'll hit me when I go back home and he's not there. Nope. Still feels like I could pick up the phone right now and call him. There were gates at Bullock or at training where I was like, hey, I'm doing this cool Army thing. He's always been interested in what I'm doing. I'm going to call him and tell him about it. Oh shit, I can't.
Yeah, and for me it'd be one thing, because growing up I had no intention of joining the military, even though my grandfather was in the Army on my mom's side, and my dad's dad, he was in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. I had no intention originally of joining the military. I think talking with my dad while I was at Cedarville University, he kind of convinced me like, oh, maybe you should give ROTC a try. And I kind of haphazardly did that. I couldn't keep up with grades, ROTC, and track. So I was like, what am I going to cut out? Oh, right. I'm going to cut out ROTC. And then like, it kind of like, while I was in ROTC, I kind of picked up a little bit more of a drive to eventually do it. And, I was probably going to do it after I had graduated, and, other life stances got in the way, like during my senior year and my 5th year at college. And I had to wait a few times, but I eventually got in. So like, now I'm glad. So like, my grandfather never really thought that I would end up joining the Army or the Air Force, because I just didn't really have an intent to. I kind of wish he could see me now so I can relate to it.
Sure.
Yeah, I can talk to him about it, and he'd be able to give me some advice. And, he'd probably be like, oh, you need to quit your bitching and moaning and just go ahead and do it. Back in my day. And I remember, I think the most iconic answer I ever got from him when I asked him what he did in World War II, he'd always tell me he was a ditch digger. I dug ditches. I'm like, well, how fast do you have to dig ditches? And his go-to answer was, faster than the Germans can shoot at us.
That's fair.
And that's a very valid point. So there's that, like, I'm like you were saying, you haven't processed your grandfather's death yet. And it takes time, and it takes a lot of time to really, fully comprehend it. Mm-hmm. But for me, like, I was just out in Arlington, I think maybe 10 days ago, with my friend Dakota. He's another lieutenant in the unit that I'm in that's out here. And, I was walking up to where my grandfather's interned at, like I was talking to him about him, and you just like mentioning him. But like, I found myself like trying to hold back tears, sure. Just like, just small tears. Like, just like thinking that like, man, I really wish he was here. Like, I wish I can talk to him now that I'm a little bit mature, like the answers he can give me, and, or just what he can say. And, I was on Facebook. I think I found them about a year ago, but for his division, which was the 13th Armored Black Cats, they have a little Facebook association page, and it was really warming to know, because I messaged them while I was out here. Now, I didn't message them last year because I was busy with working and I couldn't go to the events they've been putting on last year. Was hoping that they would have a reunion event out in DC like they did last year. So they had last year, there was 2 surviving members of that division, both over 100 years old, out in DC.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Came out and they did a little ceremony out at Arlington and at Fort Belvoir at the U.S. Army Museum. And it's like, I'm hoping they do something again this year so I can participate. But I was able to reach out to them, and I was tell them, hey, my grandfather was in this division, he was in this battalion in this company. And they reached out to me, and they'd say, hey, what was his name? So I gave them a name, and it's like, oh, we know him. Well, like, Claire and Ruth, how are they doing? And that, like, I had to, like, kind of break it down. It's like, wow. Oh, sadly, like, my grandfather passed away in 2012, and then shortly after his wife passed away in 2014, and sure. They were interned at Arlington. And I was, from what I can told them, like, from what I can remember, they were very active with the reunions and in the community. And they said, yes, they were very active. They were really well liked, with everybody at the reunions, which is just great to know that, like just someone else holds that memory of them. Like, they probably knew him a lot more than I did. You know, I'm 18, who thinks of, oh, I'm get to go to grandma and grandpa's, like when you're 16, 17, and 18, you're like, no, I want to go out and hang out with my friends.
Right.
But like just knowing that someone knew them very well and were able to tell me like, yeah, they were very active, they were very well liked in the community over here, and were very helpful. It's just great to know, and it's astounding to know like how great of a man my grandfather was, and how great of a man my other grandfather is currently. And I think of who are the great men in today's society. Like, are they really that great in comparison to like our grandparents?
Right.
Like, yeah, there are some great men, but in my opinion, even great men today pale in comparison to most of the great men from that generation.
Sure.
They were able to look out for their community. They helped people build houses. They helped people with food. They helped people internationally. Like realistically, there was a world war. They helped literally free everybody who was interned in concentration camps.
Sure. Sure.
I talked to my dad just the other day about going to the Holocaust Museum eventually while I'm out here. I never got a chance to do it when I was in DC about 10 years ago. And he said, and I think we came to DC when I was 5, so I don't remember any of this, but they went to the Holocaust Museum, and while my grandfather was walking through, he had to walk out. He couldn't, because he actually lived through that. He was there. He was on, like, boots on the ground there. Mm-hmm. And I, if I had to go through that, if I would be able to go through a full museum piece on it. Like, I think it's a great museum. I think everybody, when they are mature enough, should go through that museum.
Yes.
Myself including. I'm planning on going through it. Hopefully, if not next week, within the next 2 weeks of going there. But
it's a great museum, but it does strike a chord in a different level of your humanity than I ever expected it to. You read about it, mm-hmm. but the Holocaust Museum does a really good job of showing you, and it's a whole other level. So yeah, wow. But that's cool though that they knew him and that his memory lives on in people whose lives that he touched. I mean, obviously your family, so that's one thing, but to hear from that in a different aspect of his life, that's pretty cool. Yeah, no, it's great. It's like say you were really good at a sport, right? And you always have your dad saying, "Oh, you're doing a great job, son." But you're like, "Yeah, but you're my dad. You're my dad." But when biased. Someone else say you were playing football against your rival's team, but someone from the other team's parents then came up to you, was like, "Son, you had a really good game." Someone else's parents it's like, "I know you're at a rival school, but I can't wait to watch you go to college and play in college." Yeah. It's like one of those things hits. Like for my grandpa, it's like they were well liked, they were great people. Yep. They will be missed dearly. And I'm like, oh, that's like, it's like it strikes a hardcore there. Yeah. It's like external affirmation. Exactly. All right, I'm going to give this last question to my good friend, the late, great James Lipton.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, in my opinion, heaven does exist. I was raised in the church, and I still hold to it. I may not be the best Christian in the world. I can tell you for sure I'm not the best Christian in the world. But I would like God to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That would be one thing. And, that's something I struggle with. Personally, being that good, what am I to say what a good Christian is, right? Sure. But there are key factors that I know that I fall short of what an actual good Christian is. And part of it is not taking that tactical pause and someone says something to you and all you want to do is snap back right at them. Right. Okay. And I'm not saying you always have to turn the other cheek. No, I'm not saying that. But there is if it's just a petty comeback that someone says to you, there you can let that go. You don't have to one up them or go for a kill shot. And that's my personality. Is I think things and I just I don't want it to continue on. I just want to stamp it out right away. So I'm the type of guy who goes for the kill shot. Sure. And yeah, that definitely bites me back a whole lot more than that. But yeah, if I can ever attain to be a great man, and not just by the world standards, but by the Bible standard, by God's standard. I mean, I need to work on being more philanthropic, actually being able to say, and this is what I want to build up to, is being able to literally, if I ever had to, take the shirt off my back and give it to someone else. And it's not a left wing or right wing agenda. It's being an overall good person, being able to take care of your community and being that godly example to someone, showing compassion and being, sympathetic and compassionate and understanding of what's going on in other people's lives. Like, I don't know everything about you, your background. I know some amount, from the time we spent in basic and what we're talking about now, and a little bit more about me from basic training and then now.
Yep.
But you still don't know everything about me. A decent amount about me. I don't know everything about you. So it's like the old like, oh, that guy's just a terrible person. But do you really know if he's an actual terrible person or just having a bad day or having an extremely bad day? Right. You don't know the background in everybody's life. So it's that tactical pause. It's like being compassionate, being understanding, being willing to listen and sympathize to an extent. And if they really are just doing something bad, maybe just talking to them and be like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Like, I don't know what's going on in your thing, and I can maybe understand a little bit of why you're doing that, but still doesn't make it right.
Right. Right.
I feel like back in the day, people could point out what's good or what's bad, and even with a sympathetic mind, it's like, hey, that's probably not the good. But everything has gone so postmodern.
Right.
In today's society, it's like there's no clear definition anymore. Right. In my opinion, and that's the hard thing. And it's like I'm trying not to snap at people, but like sometimes something's bad, but they're like they don't understand that it's bad because of what they like the generational differences that's been happening.
Right. Well, hey, Phil, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Any last words for the audience, or from me? You could say no.
No, I got something.
Okay.
Duval County.
What is that?
Jacksonville Jaguars, baby.
God, Jesus Christ. Go Packers, go Jets. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, you're in a split conundrum with Aaron Rodgers going over to the Jets. I'm gonna tell you what. I think you're gonna hear it here first, folks. I think Jordan Love is actually gonna surprise some people.
Yeah.
I think the Packers have a winning season, but still miss the playoffs.
Okay, I accept that. I think you're probably right. I think Jordan Love is carried by the team. He's gonna be fine, but he's not gonna be a phenom.
Jordan Love is gonna be a modern day Blake Bortles of the 2017 Jaguars.
That's such a specific take. I think that's probably right though. God. Okay, I'll take it. It's better than nothing.
I mean, honestly, if it's like the 2017 Jaguars, you guys make the NFC Championship.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it'll be quite similar to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thanks for coming on, man.
No, it's been my pleasure.
It's good to see you.
It's nice seeing you too, man.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, and follow. Word of mouth is our best friend right now, and we appreciate you help growing our platform. Next, I'll be exploring some of my favorite bonded bourbons. Bottle & Bond is a unique history with U.S. law and whiskey, and on August 19th, I'll be sitting down with my good friend Nathan Hogg to enjoy some great bourbon and to get to know him better. Cheers.